Hello, YouTube. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 5 articles for you in this episode. All the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience. Here, we'll get started with the first one. It says, It Matters How You Stand. And the article is entitled, Oregon Standoff Defendants Testimony to Impeach Government Witness. And there is a copy of the, I guess it's called an order, a case file at the beginning of this. If you want to pull it up to see that for yourself, as I said, the description of the video for your convenience. And this is how it reads. It's by Maxine Bernstein from the Oregonian. So it says, defense lawyers for the 4 Oregon standoff defendants set for trial this week want Pete Santilli, who awaits prosecution in Nevada, to be flown to Oregon to testify on their behalf and to impeach another co-defendant, Blaine Cooper, now expected to be a government witness. Jury selection starts Tuesday morning for the remaining 4 defendants accused of federal conspiracy, weapons, and depredation of government property charges stemming from the 41-day seizures of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge last winter. U.S. District Judge Anna J. Brown already has issued orders for occupation leaders Ammon Bundy, who was acquitted of all charges, and Ryan Payne, who has pled guilty to a conspiracy charge, to be flown from Nevada to Oregon to testify for the defense. The defendant's request for Santilli was filed on Sunday after defendants learned that Cooper, who pled guilty to the conspiracy charge in the refugee case last summer, is expected to testify for the prosecution. The defense team estimate that Santilli's testimony would last about half a day, and the lawyers have requested he be transferred to Oregon in early March. Pete Santilli is a journalist who reported on the protest at the refugee, who reported on the protest at the refuge from its and has extensive personal knowledge of the events relevant to these proceedings. Defense lawyer Jesse Merriweather wrote in his Sunday motion. He was close to Blaine Cooper throughout the events at the issue. Defendants intend to call Mr. Santilli to impeach the testimony of Blaine Cooper, who the government recently disclosed will testify as a government witness. Both Santilli and Cooper are in custody in Nevada. Santilli is awaiting trial in connection with the April 2014 armed standoff with Bureau of Land Management officers near the Bundy Ranch in Bunkerville, Nevada. Cooper of Humboldt, Arizona, in August pled guilty to conspiracy and assault on federal officer in the Nevada case and is set to be sentenced in mid-March. Prosecutors are expected to recommend a 6-year sentence, but he can argue for less time. In the Oregon refuge takeover case, 26 people were indicted on federal conspiracy, weapons, and other charges stemming from the occupation of the federal wildlife sanctuary outside of Burns in eastern Oregon. 7 people were acquitted of the charges after a 5-week trial in Portland last fall. 11 people have pled guilty to conspiracy charge, and 3 others have pled guilty to a misdemeanor trespassing charge. Santilli had all charges dismissed against him on the eve of the fall trial. He never stayed overnight at the Federal Wildlife Refuge, and his defense attorney in Oregon argued that much of the material he broadcast on his YouTube channel was under the First Amendment. Cooper was part of the first convoy of people to drive to the refuge in Harney County on January the 2nd from a demonstration in Burns, where he was protesting the return to federal prison of father and son ranchers Dwight Hammond Jr. and Steve Hammond. Cooper, who has registered a film company called Third Watch Media, carried a camera while co-defendants armed with firearms cleared the refuge building that day, a prosecutor said at his plea hearing. Cooper also was seen driving government trucks on the refuge. On January 3rd, Cooper appeared on a video with occupation leader Ammon Bundy, in which Bundy promised to make the refuge a base for patriots to live and stay for several years, according to the prosecutors. Cooper introduced himself on the video and urged those who come to the refuge to bring your arms. Cooper left the refuge on January 26th or 27th and was arrested in Utah on February the 11th. In the Nevada case on Facebook exchange Cooper had with Santilli on April the 8th of 2014 was cited in court documents in which Cooper wrote to Santilli that it was time to stop all this huffing and puffing over the microphones and go down and do what we got to do in Nevada. Prosecutors in Nevada described Cooper as a mid-level leader and organizer in the 2014 standoff there. The next article that I have is off of reviewjournal.com. Testimony begins in Bunkerville standoff trial in Las Vegas. And this is by Jenny Wilson, and it says, defiant cattle rancher Cliven Bundy tossed a court order out the window of his truck and tried to pay grazing fees to Clark County instead of the federal government. A department lawyer testified Monday as prosecutors began to establish the chain of events that led to an armed standoff in Bunkerville in 2014. Justice Department lawyer Terry Petrie took the witness stand Monday in the federal trial of 6 people accused of conspiring with Bundy to block the Bureau of Land Management from impounding the rancher's cattle. Petrie testified that several months before the cattle roundup, Bundy told him that if the federal government showed up to impound his cattle, he would physically respond. He said he would be soliciting the assistance of his neighbors, his friends, and his supporters, Petrie said. Petrie read from the court documents dating to the early 90s that detail Bundy's various attempts to flout federal court orders regarding his livestock. The testimony provided jurors a snapshot of the legal saga that resulted in the politically charged armed confrontation. In response to a mid-1990s court ruling, Bundy accused the BLM of harassing him, threw the court order out the window of his truck, and drove away, Petrie testified. He said Bundy's son then picked up the order, tore it into pieces, and threw it on the ground. Petrie testified that the rancher mailed a check for nearly $2,000 to Clark County in 1995. The amount it paid to the would have covered 1 year of grazing fees, but Bundy, who previously has said that the county sheriff has jurisdiction over the federal lands, refused to pay the federal government. Clark County returned the check to Bundy, Petrie said. Earlier in the day, a defense attorney representing one of the men on trial announced he recently received an unredacted version of the report that accuses the BLM agent of several conduct violations, including using his position to obtain sold-out Burning Man tickets in 2015. Todd Leventhal, who represents defendant Scott Drexler, previously had cited suspicions that the federal agent in the report is the same person who oversaw the cattle impoundment in Bunkerville. The unredacted version is quite scary, Your Honor, Leventhal said. The attorney said 5 or 6 other government witnesses were mentioned in the report in addition to the special agent who is targeted. The agent was not named in open court Monday, but the court filing suggests that defense attorneys believe it is special agent in charge Dan Love. U.S. District Judge Gloria Navarro did not immediately rule on the issue. BLM agent Rand Stover, who testified Monday, is among the people whom Leventhal indicated he would like to ask about the report before defense lawyers had a chance to cross-examine the witness. In questioning Stover Monday, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve Meyer tried to chip away at the defense contentions that federal authorities restricted protesters' First Amendment rights to freely assemble when they created a designated First Amendment area near the cattle roundup. Stover testified under direct examination that the public lands were closed during the impoundment operation to ensure safety. He said the First Amendment area, which was marked with orange cattle tape, was intended to create a safe place for the public where they could see what was going on. that I have is off of the apnews.com, and it says, Judge denies request to halt Dakota Access pipeline work. On Monday refused to stop construction on the last stretch of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is progressing much faster than expected and could be operational in as little as 30 days. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg ruled after an hour-long hearing that as long as oil isn't flowing through the pipeline, there is no imminent harm to the Cheyenne River and Standing Rock Sioux tribes, which are suing to stop the project. But he said he'd consider the arguments more thoroughly at another hearing on February the 27th. That gives the tribes hope that they still might prevail. Cheyenne River Chairman Harold Frazier said, to put that pipeline in the ground would be irreparable harm for us in our culture, he said. The tribes requested the temporary injunction last week after Texas-based Energy Transfer Partners got federal permission to lay pipe under the Missouri River Reservoir in North Dakota. That's the last big section of the $3.8 billion pipeline, which would carry oil from North Dakota to Illinois. The tribe said the pipeline would endanger their cultural sites and water supply. They added a religious freedom component to their case last week by arguing that clean water is necessary to practice the Sioux religion. The mere presence of the oil in the pipeline renders the water spiritually impure, said Nicole Duchenow, lawyer for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. But Boasberg said any immediate harm to the tribe comes from when the spigots are turned on and the oil flows through the pipeline. Despite the setback, American Indian activist Chase Iron Eyes said pipeline opponents will continue fighting the project in the courts and maintaining an on-the-ground presence in the drilling area in peaceful prayer and in dignity as we assert our rights to protect our environment, our economy, and our sovereignty. ETP spokeswoman Vicky Grandado, I guess it's pronounced, said last week that the drilling work would take about 2 months and that the full pipeline system would be operational within 3 months. But David DeBold, a lawyer for Dakota Access, said the work is going more quickly and suggested the pipeline could be ready for oil in as soon as 30 days. We're not in a position where we can agree to any kind of stopping the pipeline, DeBold said. In an email Monday evening, the Associated Press, Granado touted the efficiency of the company's equipment and crews, but didn't elaborate further. Partners received final approval from the Army last week to lay pipe under the reservoir and complete the 1,200-mile pipeline. Drilling work began immediately under Lake Oahe, which is the water source for both tribes. The company's attorney filed court documents early Monday urging Boasberg to reject the tribe's request, calling the new religious freedom argument exceedingly tardy, not constructed related, and last-minute delay tactic. Dakota Access has the greatest respect for the religious beliefs and tradition of the tribes. The belief sought here simply is not necessary to protect the exercise of those beliefs or preserve those traditions, wrote William Sherman, company attorney. The Corps also filed court documents Monday arguing that the work stoppage isn't warranted, saying the tribe will have plenty of time to make their case before oil flows through the pipeline. Work under Lake Oahe had been held up in the courts until President Donald Trump last month instructed the Army Corps of Engineers to advance construction. The Army is involved because its engineering branch manages the river and its system of hydroelectric dams, which is owned by the federal government. Energy Transfer Partners maintains that the pipeline is safe and disputes that cultural sites have been affected. But an encampment near the construction in southern North Dakota drew thousands of protesters last year in support of the tribes, leading to occasional clashes with law enforcement and more than. The camp has thinned to fewer than 300 people, but law enforcement officers continue to maintain its presence in the area. The cost to taxpayers has reached $33 million. the state's Joint Information Center reported on Monday. The article I have is off of BizPac Review. And I'm waiting on the hamster. Here we go. ICE raids result in 161 arrests in one state. 75% had prior felony convictions. Yes, anyway. Surprise, surprise. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials are calling the arrest of 161 people during a 5-day raid in Southern California routine, but that did not stop protesters from taking to the streets. David Marin, director and removal operations for ICE in Los Angeles, said approximately 75% of those arrests have criminal history, while others were detained as the arrests were taking place because they were undocumented, according to Fox News. Marin said the prior felony convictions, including sex offenses, assault, robbery, and weapons violations, the Los Angeles Times reported. They were targeted for removal in raids planned before Trump took office. They would have been enforcement priorities under the Obama administration. A similar operation took place last summer with 112 people arrested, according to the Times. Marin called out the media for dangerous and irresponsible reports that are creating panic. The rash of these recent reports about ICE checkpoints and random sweeps and the like, it's all false, and that's definitely dangerous and irresponsible, he said. Reports like that create panic, and they put communities and law enforcement personnel in unnecessary danger. More or less confirmed the criminal background of those arrested, taking to Twitter early Sunday to say, the crackdown on illegal criminals is merely the keeping of my campaign promise. But this did not stop the open border left from taking the streets to protect the actions. Here's a sampling of images from Twitter. So if you pull this up, you'll see these. There's some video in this. All these protests and stuff taking place. The next article I have is off of Liberty Writers, and it's on the same subject. It says, every single ICE agent is cheering at what Trump did in states. It says Fox 8 is reporting that 200 arrests have been made by ICE in Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. The full statistics from the arrests will be made public on Monday. Have no fear, Trump is here. An ICE official confirmed that most of the arrests were people that had prior felony convictions such as sex crimes, weapons, or assault charges. ICE officials say they made roughly 200 arrests in Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Democratic Representative Joaquin Castro said that ICE did the same thing across all of Texas. And there's some video there if you want to pull it up to watch that. It says, here's the list of raids that has occurred so far. South Carolina had 160 arrests of dangerous illegals with criminal backgrounds. And they also made arrests in Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, and South Carolina. So that's all I have for you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed.